The next feature we're going to explain is the relative, absolute, and mixed cell references. This area here displays the subjects taught by an instructor, the hours spent for every subject, and their remuneration for every lesson hour. So we'll have to calculate the cost for 18 hours of teaching Windows in cell E6. As we've already mentioned, we'll start with typing equals, and then the reference of the cell containing the value 18, which is C6, multiplied by D6, cell reference. Then we press enter, and Excel will display the result, which is 180. In cell E6, as we can see in the formula bar, we've typed C6 times D6. This cell here, the C6, is located 2 cells to the left of the cell E6, while D6 is the only cell to the left of E6.
Now, let's take a moment to see how Excel works. Although we have typed equals C6 times D6 in cell E6, Excel actually entered the position of cell C6 relative to E6. Cell C6 is 2 cells to the left of E6, so where we typed C6, Excel entered 2 cells to the left. Similarly, for cell D6 is 1 cell to the left of E6, so Excel, instead of entering D6, it entered 1 cell to the left.
This is how the fill handle works. If we bring the mouse pointer to the fill handle of cell E6 and holding the left mouse button down, we drag downwards, the only thing that is copied is equals 2 cells to the left multiplied by 1 cell to the left. So in cell E7, the 2 cells on the left correspond to cell C7, which is why C7 appears in the formula bar, and 1 cell on the left now corresponds to D7, which is why D7 appears here as well. The same goes for the other cells that we have filled in automatically with the fill handle. Now, let's see once more how the example worked. In cell E6, we have typed C6 times D6. As we've already mentioned, cell C6 is 2 cells to the left relative to cell E6, while cell D6 is 1 cell to the left relative to cell E6. C6 and D6 are called relative references because they are relative to cell E6. The only thing we did when using the fill handle was to copy this relative reference.
In this example, the price per hour is always €10. Therefore, we don't need to dedicate an entire column to it. So, we have removed the column, as we can see here, and typed the text price per hour in cell C20 and the text €10 in cell D20. The rest of the data remain the same.
So what we need to do is calculate the cost of 12 hours for Windows in cell D22. We're going to start with equals. Then, instead of typing 12, we type the cell reference C22. And instead of the value 10, we type the cell reference D20. We press enter, and Excel will display the correct result.
We have already mentioned that although we have typed equals C22 times D20, Excel actually interpreted this to 1 cell to the left, because C22 is 1 cell to the left relative to cell D22, multiplied by the reference of the cell appearing 2 cells above. This is so because D20 is 2 cells above the cell where we have typed the formula in.
We're now going to use the fill handle to copy the formula to the rest of the cells. Here's the result. And it's wrong.
Let me remind you once more that the only thing the fill handle does is copy the formula, one cell to the left multiplied by two cells above, two cells up.
Now, let's see why these error messages have been displayed. If we click cell D23 and check the formula displayed in the formula bar, we can see the following. The C23 reference corresponds to one cell to the left, and this is the one we've actually wanted to type. But the problem is when Excel interprets the two cells up part of the formula. In this example, two cells up points to the cell containing the text cost, not to the cell D20, the one we've actually wanted to display.
Therefore, we have to find a way to ask Excel to lock the reference of cell D20, not allowing it to change to D21, as we see here, or D22, as we see in the cell below. This is how we're going to correct all error mistakes. C22 is a relative reference like D20. Instead of using a relative reference, we have to use an absolute reference for this cell.
In order to apply an absolute reference, we'll have to type the $ in front of the column indication and then again in front of the row indication. We're going to click on cell D22 and in the formula bar we're going to type the absolute reference. That's the $ as we said. And then press enter.
Excel, on the other hand, entered in this cell the reference of one cell to the left, because the reference of cell C22 is relative, multiplied by the $ D, the $20.
We bring the mouse pointer to the fill handle and as soon as it takes the form of a black thin cross, we drag downwards. Now this produces the correct result. Let's see why.
In this cell, D23, Excel has entered the reference of one cell to the left, which is C23, and it is the correct one, multiplied by D20, that contains the price per hour. It did the same for the rest of the cells as well. Observe that the relative reference changes, while the absolute reference remains the same.
Now, let's see how we can improve this formula. Remember, the first time that we used the fill handle without the absolute reference, we dragged downwards and 20 changed to 21, then to 22, then to 23, etc. Because when we drag downwards, the only thing that changes is the row number. But in this case, this didn't happen because of the $ in front of 20. In the same way, if we move the mouse pointer to the right, D would have become E, F, G, etc. But this is also prevented from the $ that has been entered in front of the letter D. In this specific example though, there's no way to drag to the right, we can only drag downwards. So the $ in front of D is redundant. Therefore, we can delete it and press enter. Then we use the fill handle to drag downwards. As we can see, both the formulas and the results are correct.
In this cell, D20 appears again as in the other cells. D $20 is now a mixed reference. We have already mentioned that the D20 is a relative reference. $D $20 is an absolute reference, and what we just typed, which is D $20, is mixed reference. It is absolute only by rows. 20 does not become 21, 22, and so on. If we had typed $D20, it could still be a mixed reference and the column would be locked. It would be absolute by column only.
Absolute, relative, and mixed references are perhaps one of the most difficult elements of Excel to understand. We hope that with this lesson they became clearer.